what I would say is it's important to actually understand your history with previous upper respiratory tract infections that you have had.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
Historic reference for your own body and how you tend to respond to a similar kind of infection can be helpful. It can inform how this illness might trend for you in terms of, how many days are you going to be in this phase? How many days are you going to be in that phase? But more importantly is understand how your voice functions for you when you are healthy, so that you can compare where you're at when you are unhealthy. And a really nice way to do that is to check your mucosal ceiling and look for swelling traps. And that was a concept that was introduced by Dr. Robert Bastian, who is a laryngologist in Chicago. And basically, the mucosal ceiling, it's a very low-tech way. All you need is a keyboard. And what it assesses is what is the highest note on the keyboard that you can phonate softly and a very light, pure head tone.
Yeah.
Like prepubescent soprano.
Yeah.
And knowing where that is for you when you're healthy is going to provide you with useful data when you are not healthy. So that if you are a fifth off from where you can normally phonate, nice and high in your light head register, then that is most likely inflammation.
Yeah.
And your mucosal tissue is not happy in that moment because you're sick. So Dan, let's say you've never actually played around with that concept and checked, your highest light soft phonation. Well, you can still gauge it to look at what your trends are.
Yeah.
And so if each day it's very clear that the delayed onsets are a little less delayed, it's a little less sticky, you're able to get a little bit higher, that's telling you where you are, how you're trending with this illness, and that the vocal folds are starting to regain some sort of normal function. I think that that's really useful because it's going to tell you soft high phonation is going to reveal problems, even when they're subtle. And in fact, it's also useful when you just have high voice demands and you are using your voice a lot more than you typically do. It's nice to check for those swelling traps just to make sure that you are not getting yourself into a situation where you are starting to create vocal fold swelling that would become more chronic. So how to check it? Shall we use you as a guinea pig?
I'm happy to be the guinea pig. Let's give it a shot.
Okay. So where would you typically top off in a light phonation? And when I say light and high, the task, so there are two tasks that you can do.
Yeah.
The first one is you sing the first line of Happy Birthday to You. And it's Happy Birthday to you.
Yeah.
And you're sort of looking for when it sort of starts to stick.
Yeah.
That's one variation. Also, you can do and you're looking for clean, crisp onset without a glottal, where you do not have to increase loudness in order to make the sound happen. So where would that typically be for you if you were to guess?
Being a true tenor, I'm up in the C5s, D5s.
Let's start lower since you are sick.
Today. I don't know if we're going to get me up to a C5 today. Let's give it a shot.
Very impressed. And so just a very soft, just do the. Okay. And so now gauge, how does that feel compared to how you expect that to feel?
I had to apply a little bit more weight than I would normally want to find myself applying.
Yeah.
You can hear the inconsistency in the phonatory pattern, right?
Yeah. And let's go up.
What are we on there?
That's B.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so for you and singers,
I'm having to work really hard to get there. You know,
you'd have to make it louder, right?
Yeah.
And so that so that gives you a nice data point to track over the course of the next week. You know, so if you had let's say you had a concert in 10 days and you're still on the upswing and you're trying to get a sense of how is this thing going to pan out in terms of timing for me? Well, checking that daily and tracking it is actually helpful.
Yep.
Right? Because if in 2 days you're able to do the B and the C and it's a little less sticky, you absolutely will notice those subtle differences. Singers are very good at predicting what something should feel like in their voice. Yeah. And if it comes out and it's different, we can tell. And so knowing where your mucosal ceiling is and checking for those swelling traps during an illness, I think is very useful. It also, putting that together with where you are with your symptoms. Yeah. Are they starting to kind of calm down a little bit? You're not itchy. You're not sneezing quite as much. Yeah. You don't feel like you're as phlegmy, all of those things, then that tells you you're most likely somewhere in the transitional phase. So historical reference of how your body tends to behave when you have an upper respiratory tract infection, and then checking your mucosal ceiling and looking for those swelling traps or where you start to have delayed onset. And then tracking how that's behaving and how that's trending over the course of, several days, I think is actually very useful.